Sometimes when we are creating a layout plan, we end up with some really big, unpleasant fillers. And on paper, they don't look that bad, but when we get to real life, we don't like them. And that's why sometimes we can put in a cabinet instead. And that's what we're doing in this video. I will tell you how you can avoid to get those fillers in the first place, but sometimes circumstances just are that there's no way of not having those big fillers, but then we can utilize the space for something much better. Let's get started. So here it is again, our layout plan for this particular setup. And if we take a closer look, you'll see that we have this really big filler on the left. And then you can wonder, why can we not avoid that? Well, in many cases, we can just slide the whole line of cabinets to the left, because over there to the right, we have a corner cabinet. So that filler in the corner can be made a tiny bit bigger. And that will look a lot better than having this big filler to the left. Here, the problem is, though, that the client really want that faucet in the sink cabinet to sit dead center on the window. I know on the sketch it doesn't look like that, but in reality, when I installed this kitchen, there was no discussion. The faucet has to sit dead center on the window, and that means we cannot slide that whole line of cabinets to the left. So when all the cabinets were installed, we actually had 7.5 inches to the left of the pantry cabinet, and that is a big filler. So what did we do? Well, as you know already, we took a pantry cabinet and we cut it down to 5 inches and added some doors. And doing just that is what I do in 99% of all cases where we have a really big filler. I take a cabinet and I cut it down. The only problem is, though, that we need to have a door that fits, and that means for a base cabinet, we can have a 30-inch high cabinet and a 5-inch wide door by using a drawer front. And as you'll see in this video, we have a 90-inch high pantry cabinet, and that means we can put 3 doors on it that is 5 inches wide and 30 inches high. So before you start to cut your cabinets in width and height, you need to begin with the end in mind, and that means Ikea need to have a drawer front or a door you can put on. Otherwise, there's no point cutting the cabinet unless you really want an open cabinet. But you cannot take a 40-inch upper cabinet in height and cut to any width, because there is no front to put on it, because the biggest drawer front is 36 inches wide. So keep that in mind. In this video, I will focus on how I took that big pantry cabinet and cut it down to 5 inches in width. And if you check one of my other videos, I will show you how to put on hinges on those drawer fronts, because that is really not that difficult. On that note, let's start modifying this big pantry cabinet. So I'm not going to comment every single move I'm doing here, only the ones where it needs a bit of explanation. So lean back and see how it's done. When we're cutting parts for cabinet reduction, you can either focus on how much you're cutting off or how much you want the part to be. And I do both, because when I cut the bottom of the top of a cabinet, I think about how much I want it to be, because that's the measurement I put on my table saw. So for instance, if I want to have a cabinet that is 5 inches wide, the piece I need to cut is 3.5 inches, because the 2 gables on the cabinet are 3/4 of an inch each. So that's exactly what I've done here. And when I get to the back of the cabinet, I think about how much I have to cut off, because I don't know the width of the back of the cabinet, because it sits in that groove. So if I'm reducing a 15-inch cabinet, which I'm doing in this case down to 5 inches, I'm just cutting off 10 inches, because then I know it will fit. I put on those studs and use the lock nut on one side of the cabinet, and the other side I have to drill and put in screws. With the top and the bottom of the cabinet in place, I am putting on the back of the cabinet. And I do have to remember to put the bracket on so the cabinet can hang on the rail. Now it's time to bring out my drill and my screws, because the other side of the cabinet has to be secured into the top and the bottom with screws, because we cut away all the assembly hardware. And this is also the time where I realized that I cut the 2 shelves I want to put in from the old top and bottom material. And I should have cut it from the shelves that came with the cabinet, because now they're too long, so I have to cut a little bit off because they don't go all the way to the back, those shelves. And we want to put in 2 shelves here where we have 30 inches from each end, because that's where the doors will meet, and we need some strength built into that cabinet, otherwise it will open up as a barrel. We don't want that to happen. So that's why I marked 30 inches from each end, so I know where to put those shelves. Now it's time to put on the other side of the cabinet, and you need to spend a little time making sure that it is positioned correct on the top of what you build already, because it's important that it will look nice when it's done. So you need to make sure that it's not sitting off the top and the bottom of that cabinet. You just need to make sure that it's good, and when you have all that lined up, you can put on a few clamps if need be to make sure that it's staying in the right position. And when all that is done, you can push in those 2 shelves that we have cut. They are 3.5 inches wide, and they have the correct length now. So you can put them in where you marked before, so you know exactly where they're going. And I use a carpenter square to make sure that they're sitting perpendicular to the front of the cabinet. And then you simply mark on the outside, and you start drilling holes and putting in screws and tying it all together. And with all the screws in on one side, we are turning the cabinet around so we can put screws in the other side. But on the other side, we only have to put them into the 2 shelves in the middle, because we do have the locking hardware at the end. So that's what we're doing. Next up, I'm being a bit proactive, because I know when that cabinet is sitting in place, I want to have a filler on the left hand side of that cabinet. And drilling holes to secure the filler to the cabinet is not easy from the inside of the cabinet, because it's so narrow that I drill those holes already now, and I use a piece of scrap wood to put on the back side of the cabinet. Otherwise I will have a tear off on the inside, and we don't want to look at that. And when that is done, we can lift the cabinet up and put some nails in the back. I know it's probably not necessary, but I like to be thorough, and I like to use my little hammer and put in some nails. So that's what I'm doing. With the cabinet fully assembled, it's time to hang it on the rail. And you want to have a leg for the cabinet within reach, because when it's hanging there, you want to put a leg on it, because it's heavy and it's sitting on one bracket only. So you don't want to create a risk by hanging that cabinet without a leg under it to support it. So bring it over, lift it up. Sometimes it takes a few tries because you think you can do it without looking through the hole on top of the cabinet to see where the rail is positioned. So maybe you should be 2 when you do it. I did it on my own as usual, as you can see, and eventually I got it up there, and then I added 1 leg. And when that cabinet was hung, I brought over the pantry cabinet sitting next to it, so I can hang that up right away and clamp them together. So mission accomplished, and we have a very narrow but very useful cabinet where we can put in cutting boards and baking sheets and spaghetti and that kind of thing. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, I truly hope you will subscribe to my channel and maybe give this video a like. And should you decide to leave a comment, I can guarantee you that I will reply to it. Thank you for watching.